All right, next we have the defense mechanisms. And believe it or not, this is not an exhaustive list, but rather a set of consistently used ones. The ego, as you recall, is incredibly fragile and wants to maintain itself at all costs. And oftentimes, any unwanted reality or occurrence that would threaten the way we see ourselves will be met with one of the following mechanisms, rather than just faced and resolved. One of the first ones that masks itself as something positive would be compensation. This is where you have a negative self-image, and whether warranted or not, and you develop other positive self-images to cover or compensate for that negative self-concept. For instance, I may be someone who does not feel assertive in my interpersonal relationships. I may feel that I'm a pushover. Rather than resolve whatever makes me feel passive, I go to martial arts and become an excellent fighter. Now, I know that if I am pushed, I can defend myself. However, the issue was not defending myself physically. It has always been asserting myself, which has nothing to do with fighting. All right, so next is introjection. You see this quite often in peer groups, or even when dealing with an overbearing parent. For instance, if you've seen Mean Girls, remember Katie, and how, although she infiltrated the plastics to sort of cause havoc, she began to accept their standards to avoid being judged like her two friends. Instead of resolving why being judged by someone would be so damaging, you simply adopt their standards to avoid that judgment. A healthy response would be to examine your dependence on the judgment of others, but no one wants to seem that way to themselves. Next is an interesting one, especially seen in the dating world: reaction formation. This is where your unconscious has a natural way of behaving or facing something, but you choose the exact opposite action. Say, you may be attracted to someone whom your peer group would be skeptical about, or does not make sense with your self-image. So you treat the person as if you are not interested at all. While this is sort of a simple example, there's way more complex ones. This just sort of illustrates. Next is a common one among children. It is called repression. This is where you take undesirable information, traumatic memory, and unwanted thought, and jam way down into your unconscious. Do you forget it? No, but you pretend that you do. And with child abuse in particular, children, rather than resolve the common thought that they are horrible people and must deserve the abuse, they repress it. A healthy response would be to see a professional and work through the self-blame or the negative self-image that could result from this treatment. However, people will repress these thoughts. Like Freud says, the repressed always returns, causing people to use other means, sometimes self-destructive behaviors like drug abuse, to repress the thoughts back. Denial, however, is a bit different. Rather than forget something painful, we act like it never occurred. Let's say that I have a child who develops drug addiction. Remember, the ego desires stasis, and I may believe that the drug addiction is a reflection of my parenting. But rather than deal with those thoughts, I deny that my child has a drug problem at all. Displacement is very common, especially as a response to social situations. This is where I redirect my anger from an appropriate uh, to an intended object, or from an intended object to another, more appropriate object. I may be getting in many fights with my boss, but if I show any anger, I can get fired. So that feeling of impotence threatens how I see myself as this assertive, masculine person. So to maintain that self-image of strength, I reprimand my children. Very, very common. Projection is another, and happens in many situations. This is where you cannot face the reality of yourself, so you place it onto another object. Gay bashing can work this way, but not always. Rationalization we saw earlier. I do poorly on a test, but rather than deal with the fact that I was lazy about studying, I blame my failure on the professor, so my self-image remains. We've spoken about sublimation, so the last is regression. You will see this with children, especially as a response to trauma. For instance, a child watches his parents divorce, and he begins wetting the bed, or engaging in other behaviors he did when he was a child. He may recall how his both parents responded to that behavior, so it is a way of not facing the reality that his family is changing. Next, we're going to move on to something called the libido. Just a word on this. This is a life force, and it's not simply just a sexual drive. It is a force that propels much of our psychic activity. The way we have it fulfilled are typically associated with the pleasure and fulfillment we get from sex, though it is not always sexual per se. Okay, this next section is where a lot of theorists break with Freud. And since it is theory only, I'm not implying that any of these stages are literal, but you will probably see how some of these ideas resonate. In order to mature into a healthy, functioning adult with appropriate sexual desires, one needs to go through these 5 stages. Caveat here, Freud based this on a heteronormative model, assuming that people are naturally heterosexual, and a family unit follows the traditional gender roles. Libido is needed to move through the stages individually or to order our psyches. We need it fulfilled. And libido does more than fulfill the sex drive, but is what sex informs us about ourselves, worthwhile individuals who are cared for. This first stage that a child goes through is something called the oral stage. All right. So, this is one of the stages known as the pregenital ones, and there's only 2. Here we have a baby, right? Baby cries out, probably wanting milk from the primary caregiver. In this heteronormative construct, it's the mother. The mother gives the breast, and the child is now fed and satisfied. It feels good about itself because it knows that it is loved and worthwhile because it is fed. Here, the libido is fulfilled through the mouth by the primary caregiver, the mother. Eventually, at some point, you're going to have to potty train this kid. So the next stage is known as the anal stage. This is where a child will have the responsibility for evacuating correctly. The child uses the toilet, we praise the child. Here he or she gets that feeling of being loved and being worthwhile. The libido fulfilled in this case, you would say anal, but it's also known as the anal sadistic stage. The child could hold his feces in, or release it inappropriately, like in the bed, and receive rebuke from the family. For the first time, the child can control all this. Next, this is where it gets very interesting. Moving into the phallic stage. Child looks down one day. We'll start with the boy. He sees a penis. Wow! Oh my god, this is awesome. I cannot wait to use this. Later, he sees a girl and is in disbelief. Where is hers? Who took it? Whatever that little girl did to lose her penis, I will never do. This is called castration anxiety. And the boy internalizes this fear, thinking that this will be the punishment for doing something wrong. And up to this point, who's been the locus of the libido? The mom. So naturally, the boy will want the mom to fulfill this desire, which is now sexual, since the erogenous zone is now the penis. There's one problem. Dad. So I'll kill him and take his place. The problem is, he's bigger than me and stronger and can hurt me. In fact, he could castrate me. So I started to see my father differently. I believe that he has this aggressive masculinity, and this is the way that all men should be. So rather than try to attack Dad, I prevent myself from doing an action. This is the first time I've ever really exercised self-control, and is the beginning of the development of my superego. The first thing that goes in there is a model for manhood. So I can take this libidinal desire and redirect it to another source. This Oedipal complex is key to developing the superego. So, I'm sure at this point you were all aghast, but let's talk about women for a second. The little girl sees the boy, and sees his penis, and realizes she is missing one. She thinks, where's mine? What happened to it? I want it back. This is called penis envy. Freud felt that with women will always mourn the losses of their phantom penises. There are many obvious problems for this. For one, it declares that women are simply not men, and are not man based on a lack of something. So the girl also has budding sexual desire. She wants mom as well, but she knows that mom doesn't have a penis either, and she blames her for it. She decides that she wants a baby of her own to fulfill that lack, and she wants dad to herself. But since dad is already taken, she must redirect her desire somewhere else. The difference in this electric complex is that women do not have a fear of castration. I know this is very odd stuff here. And if you want to play pop psychologist with it, you could say that we generally look to replicate some aspects of our parents' relationship in the partners we choose. And at this point, you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with literary analysis? But do not worry, we will plug all of these theories into a story as soon as we can do it. All right, take care.